Aloha, good morning, and welcome to Think Tech Live. My name is Jeff James, and I'll be the host of today's show, The Military in Hawaii. Our special guest today is a prospective Marine Corps officer, Miss Lacey Castleberry. Welcome, Lacey, and thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So, Lacey, I understand that you're interested in the Marine Corps, and you've been accepted to Marine Corps Officer Candidate School, correct?
Yes.
So what got you interested in the Marine Corps?
Actually, interestingly enough, I was a civilian contractor in Afghanistan for a few years. So working around the military, that really got me interested in actually joining the service. And then I just went from there and did some research at what branch would fit me the best. And the Marines definitely is my choice. And so I actually report May 28th.
Wow. So what do you think made the Marine Corps kind of your service of choice? I mean, I know that you were a varsity athlete in college. And
yes, for Gonzaga University. I played all 4 years there.
Awesome. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so and the Marine Corps is a very physical, fit piece of the military? Yes,
they have very high standards physically, which I very much appreciate. And you know the Marine Corps has such a strong culture. It's a warrior ethos. It's very strong, and it's without the whole organization. Everything that they do and study and structure, it all relates to that, and I really like that about it. I did a lot of research. I tried to stay open-minded to the other branches, but in my master's program that I just finished, military studies at HPU, I actually did my thesis on the Marines in Vietnam, but I really had to study the Marine Corps, so it really led me into making this decision. It's their high standard, it's really their warrior-like mentality, and also I really want to go into intel, and I know they have intel open to women, as do the other branches, but their human intel school seemed like pretty elite and something that I think would not only fit me, but help me in my career.
Interesting. I have a soft spot for the Marine Corps. I mean,
great.
The Navy is my number one service because I spent the bulk of my adult life in it.
Yes.
But the Marine Corps and the Navy are partners in a marriage of warfare, if you will.
Yes.
And we're all part of the naval service. So, congratulations to you on that. But before we go too deep into your foray into the Marine Corps, you talked about you had spent time as a contractor in Afghanistan.
Yes.
Now that's kind of backwards from, if you take me, for example, I spent all my time in the military and now I'm a contractor.
Right,
so
which most people do, I feel like.
So what got you into contracting, and how did you end up in Afghanistan?
That's a good question, kind of an interesting path. I graduated from Gonzaga. My soccer career was over, and I just thought, I don't know what to do next. So I bought a one-way ticket out here to Hawaii, packed my life in a couple bags, was having a great time. When I applied just for some overseas jobs, and I actually got an offer, and I was devastated to leave Hawaii and thinking, what am I doing going from paradise to the middle of the desert war zone? But it was the best decision I've made, and it was the most incredible journey. I spent about 3 years over there. I did about 3 different types of jobs, 3 different contracts. And so that gave me up close and personal experience. I was already interested in the military, but it gave me that up close, you work right alongside most of the branches over there in Afghanistan. And so I got to see how it works and what the people actually do over there. And being in a war zone, I was 23, 24 was a big eye-opener for me.
So did you have to go through military training before you went over there? Did you have to learn how to shoot a gun or dodge bullets or anything like that, or they just
I actually wish. Actually, you're not allowed to touch any, and if you're caught overseas as a contractor, at least for the company that I worked for, you're not allowed
right?
to. No.
Okay. Because they do use guns.
Yes. Yeah. And so it was very hands-off. The military is there to help protect me, and I was in no part of that. And so the training that I went through, it was, I believe, a couple weeks, and it was 8-10 hours a day on classes, cultural classes, learning about, because the locals come on base to work. And so, it was actually, some of the classes were really helpful for me because it was learning about their culture and especially how they treat women over there. And in my job, I had locals come on the base, and they essentially worked for me. And so men that don't respect women, but I was their boss, was a huge challenge. And so at least those classes gave me a heads up on what I was going to be dealing with. And then also the classes were teaching us civilians the rank and the structure and protocols of the military. So, I could call, oh, hi, Staff Sergeant, instead of just sir, or, understand what they're, you have to work alongside them. And so it was kind of understand their world and have respect and to know, you do as you're told, it's for your own safety. And if, and also if bad things were to happen on the base, what to do in that instance as well. So it was just a big crash course, and then they sent us over there.
So who provides that training? Is that through the military, or is that the firm that you're working for?
Yes, the firm that we're working for.
Yeah.
And they spend countless hours working with the military to have it like a certified class that everyone has to take going over there. It's part of their contract with the government that the employees need to take.
So that's interesting that you would have, when you go to a host nation and having some of the host nationals working for you and a different culture, and like you said, in some cultures the respect for women isn't the same as it is in America, which is what makes our country so great, I think.
Yes.
But how did you overcome that? I mean, what did you have to do, or was it just button heads? And over the course of time, do you feel that you were ever able to kind of compel somebody to a different way of thinking, or were they locked in their ways and there's no change in their mind?
No change in their mind. It actually was, it was trial and error. I tried to, be firm with, I'd have like 30 male employees or so. And, kind of the sad thing is they know a little bit of English, but they can't even read or write in their own language, majority that I had encounters with. So it's very difficult, just even in that aspect. But I tried to make an effort, let's say, like, tried to talk with them, like, trying to learn a few words in their language. And, to show that I cared and wanted to relate to them. And that was just bad news, because they would just make fun of you and tell you the wrong words, and that was not a good route. And so I found what worked for me, actually, was carrying a big knife, a little bit more intimidation, like, I'm not going to be scared of you.
Yeah.
And not trying to threaten them, but just, I'm not scared of you. I'm an American female, and this is our base that you're working on. I know it's their country, but I had to really draw lines. And actually, it was really nice working around the military, because when I would be harassed by the locals, and if it got too overwhelming, a soldier would come over and say, ma'am, do you need help? And I said, yes, I do, actually. And then, so American males around me could help bat for me and put them in their place, because nothing I did would work. So it was a big trial and error.
So that's good to hear. I mean, I mean, it's kind of reconfirms what I always thought, that even when, soldiers go overseas, I mean, they still retain, the same kind of demeanor that they would have back here. I mean, if you were in a grocery store and some guy was giving you a hard time, and there was a military guy there, he'd probably step in. I mean, you've seen those, what's the TV show? The one where they put people in weird situations to see what people's reactions will be.
Yes, I can't remember the name of that, but I know.
But anyways, that's good to hear. I'm glad to hear that. Now, let me ask a question about, what about the women there? So they don't, they see how you get treated. They see how you kind of have command of what you're doing. And did you ever have an opportunity to interact with any of the Afghan women, and what were their thoughts?
I did, actually. When I was on Bagram Airfield, that's the largest base over there. I'm sure hundreds of thousands of people have been there by now. I actually assisted a Commander Lacey, a chaplain. I became kind of his little assistant with other things on the base, visiting wounded soldiers and in the hospital and different things. And he actually ran a Women and Children's Day. It was about once a week. The women and children, they could come on the base in one little area, and they would try and teach them a little bit about hygiene and health. And they had Egyptian dentists were there to try and help. And they would do various things for the children and women, try and give the women little things and skills. And so I had some interaction, but I actually didn't go too often to those Women and Children's Days, because the women were very offstandish towards me, because I was in jeans and, a similar shirt like this. And so I, because they had the burqas, you just saw their eyes. And so it was a very different, I don't know what they thought about me, but they were just very standoffish, and I didn't feel like I was being too helpful there, as I could have been at the hospital visiting soldiers or Marines. So, so that was my limited experience with the women, and I didn't really get too much from it. I didn't hardly hear any of them speak. They're very shy. So.
Wow. So, I mean, I know when I was in the military, when I was in the Navy, and, you know, when you go on deployment, and lots of opportunity to kind of experience different cultures.
Yes.
But I'm curious for you. For me, it was always, you know, they were American appreciation tours.
Yes.
Where you just don't realize how good you have it and how great our country is until you have to go someplace that's not quite there. And did you have the same experience? I mean, did you feel the same way?
Completely. And that's why working in Afghanistan was probably the best thing that I could have done, because I already appreciated and was patriotic, but it was like, oh, wow. Like, you really see how they lived back in the Stone Age. Like, it's really an eye-opener of like, oh, I'm so thankful we have infrastructure and education and grocery stores. It's so backwards there and so behind the times, which is, if they want to live like that, but it's appalling, and it just really makes you so thankful. And also, I mean, as a female over there, it was already difficult because I want to say it was probably like 90% males, you know, because majority of the military is. So, and then it was just difficult. And then even getting in and out of Afghanistan, I think this is another part of my experience that that's also important to show that it's not just Afghanistan, a war-torn country with terrorism and all that stuff. Is I had to travel through Dubai to get to and from Afghanistan, which a lot of contractors, most people did. But I had some very bad experiences there too. And you think, oh, Dubai and all the glamour and the big buildings and the riches and it's more forward. I actually had horrible experiences because I was traveling by myself. I'm a little American with jeans. I'm not covered up. I'm not with a man. And so I've been, you know, I just kept trying to think, keep your mouth shut, Lacey, keep your mouth shut, you know, just get through it. I got searched every single time I went through the airport. I would be pushed, hit, screamed at, and everyone would just look the other way because I'm a female and I don't have a male with me. They're allowed to do kind of whatever they want.
Well, it's a different set of rules in different countries, so it's difficult. But
yes, it is.
So let's go back. Let's just do a fast forward.
Sure.
Let's say 23 years from now, and let's make a couple of assumptions. Let's assume that you have a daughter.
Okay.
Okay, and let's say that she's about the same age that you were when you decided to go overseas. You know, how would you answer her if she asked or brought to you that, you know, hey, I'm interested in maybe doing this. I want to go to, hopefully there's not another war zone, but you know, history says there's always going to be. So what if she comes to you and says, hey, I want to go do this kind of work in a war zone? Would you push her out the door and say, go get them, or would you hold her back and say, under no circumstances are you ever going to do that?
Yeah, that's a great question, because my poor mother, I think I gave her a lot of gray hairs because, you know, I'm her baby, and she, you know, that's a hard thing, I think, as a parent, whether civilian or military personnel going overseas. But I think ultimately it was such a good experience for me to open my eyes to see how good we have it here, what other cultures are like, how can I adapt, or how can I stay safe, you know, and learn how to travel on my own, and just have those experiences, I think, is priceless.
Yeah, I think you know, my observation again is that those types of experiences give you a sense of context.
Yes.
And so when you see just how prehistoric some societies still live, and the way they treat, you know, the way the interrelationships between men and women, or between men and children. And then you come to America and we talk about, you know, there's glass ceilings and there's oppression, but it's on a different scale, so it gives you a better sense of context when you're trying to address the problem. And I don't know, I just think it's helpful in that respect. So what kind of work did you do while you were in Afghanistan? I mean, what sort of tasks did you do? Were you, you know, cleaning latrines, or were you doing clerical work, or?
I was actually very fortunate. My undergrad degree is in sports management, and so my first job was related to that. I helped run the MWRs, And then I also did special events, so helping the USO shows, putting on tournaments, barbecues, making sure the gym was running smoothly.
Yeah.
So that way, trying to give soldiers an outlet away from their 12-hour days and have a little bit of fun, and also being able to connect back home, the phone centers and movies and different things like that. So I actually had a really fun job.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Lacey, we're going to take a break.
Okay.
So you're watching Think Tech Live. We're going to take a couple-minute break, and then we'll be right back with Lacey Castleberry, and we'll talk more about women who serve. Thank you.
You're watching Think Tech Hawaii, which streams live on thinktechhawaii.com, uploads to youtube.com, and broadcasts on cable OC16 and Alelo 54. Great content for Hawaii from Think Tech.
Aloha, this is Reg Baker. I'm the host of Business in Hawaii. We air every Thursday at 2 o'clock on thinktechhawaii.com. We broadcast from the ThinkTech studios in downtown Honolulu, and we talk about positive and successful companies in Hawaii. People that have been successful despite the obstacles. They all have a good story to tell. Hopefully we'll see you on Thursday at 2 o'clock. Aloha.
Hi, I'm Donna Blanchard. I'm the host of Center Stage here on Think Tech Hawaii. I hope that you will tune in and watch the show. It is inspiring and uplifting and educational also. We talk with artists of all different ilk. We talk with them about what they do, how they do it, and most importantly, most dear to my heart, why they do it. And it never ceases to be fascinating when you get the answer to that question. I hope you'll join us on Center Stage, 2 o'clock Wednesday afternoons. Aloha.
Aloha, and welcome back to Think Tech Live. This is your host, Jeff James, and our show today is The Military in Hawaii, Women Who Serve. And our guest, again, is Lacey Castleberry. Lacey is a Marine Corps officer candidate, going to officer candidate school in a few months. And we were just talking about her experiences as a contractor working in Afghanistan. I'd like to kind of transition, Lacey, over to your future career as a Marine Corps officer. So you said that your experiences in Afghanistan and serving with the military kind of got you interested in being part of that organization, and you like the structure and the rigor and the fitness piece of the Marine Corps, and that's why you elected to go that route. So what does it take? I mean, how do you even apply to be a Marine Corps officer?
Okay, good question. So I just went down to the recruiter's office, and I checked out the other branches, and I just asked them a bunch of questions. And then, what I also liked about the Marine Corps is he asked me a bunch of questions. It wasn't just like, we're going to take everybody. It was, we want to make sure this is a good fit for the Marine Corps and for you. So that was reassuring to me. They just don't want anybody. And then it was a series of lots and lots of paperwork. Everything in your history, schools where you lived, all of that. And then from there, then you start the process, putting together your packet to be selected.
So from the time you started the process, from the time you walked in the recruiter's office, and I'm sure the guy was like, okay, score,
I hope so.
a female that wants to be in the Marine Corps. We love it. This is helping us. I mean, recruiters are, they're generating a product, and that's recruits. So how long did it take from the time that you walked in the door until you got your formal notification, you've been accepted, and then from the acceptance, how long is it before you can actually go to OCS? Just so that if anybody in the audience is watching is interested in this process, they have an understanding of.
I was told about a year out from when you want to go in is start talking to them. Mine. So I would say about a year out, I was starting to talk to them, and I was still going to school doing my master's full time. So I kind of told them, this is kind of secondary right now. But then once I was done with school, I kind of sped through that. And in end of October, November, I was selected for the first board. There's 2 boards to be selected at. So if I didn't get picked up in November, I had another chance in March. Or if you don't have your packet ready to be selected, then you can go to the second board. And so now I'm going to be going end of May. So that's kind of how it went for me.
So about a year.
Yes, I would say about a year is a good guess.
Okay, and you said you wanted to go into Intel. Now, are you like signed up for Intel, or that's what you want to do, and then once you get through it, they tell you what you're going to do? That's the gamble. I believe enlisted, you can sign up for your MOS. Officer route,
you have to work your butt off to get what you want. They have a different process where first you go to OCS, Officer Candidate School.
Right.
If you graduate that, then you go on to the basic school, and that's 6 months to teach you how to be an officer. And you're evaluated for everything. So at the end of the 6 months, you're ranked. And then they divide it up into, I think, 3 different sections, and then the top people in those sections get to choose their MOS. So you really have to do well to get what you want. And so you have a preference, but you're not guaranteed anything.
So what if you couldn't be an intel officer? What would you want to do? What's your secondary or tertiary?
Signal intelligence. So try and stay within the intel field.
Okay.
So.
Okay, good. Well, you know, they have, I know that the Secretary of the Navy and all of the services, you know, have put out announcements that all combat roles are going to be open to women. I mean, even the Navy's going as far as they're going to allow women to join the SEALs, or at least go through the training, and if they qualify and all that kind of stuff. So what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that that's, do you think that's fair? Do you think that's right? Do you have, you know?
That's a big subject right now, and I'm actually passionate about it because working in Afghanistan, I saw, you know, I wasn't outside the wire. You know, I was on the base, but I did get a taste, and I did get to see a lot of what happens. And even though I pride myself being an athlete, and I always played soccer with the boys, and I want to do some more extreme things that haven't been allowed by, you know, for women to be in those roles. I'm actually very hesitant to see what's going to happen about women in combat roles because it's a different world, and I feel like people romanticize going to combat and war, and I think there are some things that, you know, women shouldn't be in those roles because it's not going to be beneficial. I'm not saying that I don't think we should have equality. I just think we need to really evaluate what equality means, because I think some women or some people out there don't realize if we're going to be allowed to be in some of these combat roles, why shouldn't we have to sign up for the selective service or for the draft?
That's a good point.
Yes.
We're talking about that right now, you know,
Exactly.
if they're all open, if it's in, you know, even
Right.
keel, then why aren't women
Yes.
being required to, you know, register for selective service? And
And equality isn't just, well, we need, if guys get to do it, we get to do it. Well, we also need to do what the not as cool stuff as well. And I feel like women, we can contribute so much. And something really cool that I saw in Afghanistan were the FET teams, the female teams that went out with the special forces. I don't want to venture to say that they are considered special forces. I don't know too much about that. But, you know, they definitely had a role that the men could not fulfill. Like if they would, you know, go into houses and it's chaos, the women could go in, the American women could go in and calm the women and children down and get them separated from the males that our men needed to interrogate and talk to. And so, you know, a male can't talk to, in that culture, you know, our male soldiers couldn't do that. And so I think the females played that role that was essential. And so I feel like that could also translate, like, there's a lot of things that we can be really great at, but I don't think we need to mimic everything that the males are doing. And so maybe putting women in these combat roles may not be the best answer.
yeah,
And there's a lot of other things that goes into that. But I feel like, hey, why don't we have our own special forces team? Why do we, you know, maybe have our own SEALs type, all females? I feel like we could do amazing things.
yeah.
But let's recognize that
Yeah.
males and females are different.
Leveraging the strengths,
Yes.
you know, each sex may have their own relative strengths and
Yes.
taking advantage of it instead of trying to homogenize it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Maybe the military should listen to you on this.
I wish, oh man, I love this subject because, you know, I have a lot of friends that were infantry and, you know, they're really big guys. They're 200 plus pounds. You put on 80 pounds of gear. Okay, let's say we're in combat together. We both have gear on, but you go down. I have to be able to have my gear and pull you to safety, and I'm 120 pounds. As big and strong as I may be able to get myself, reality is, you know, I probably won't have that capability.
Yeah. I mean, there is differences between men and women. I mean, there's a whole host of things, but
Right, right.
what do you think about when you bring men and women together? And in my experience in the Navy, on some of the ships I was on, and the one that I commanded, we had mixed gender crews, and so fraternization was always an issue. It was kind of always on the forefront because,
Right.
My personal opinion is that when you have interpersonal relationships that become romantic, it actually erodes combat readiness because it enters into a whole separate sphere of relationships and interactions that people have, and it eats away at professionalism. And so how do you think that would be in a combat unit, a ground unit, if you're out there in the field operating together? I mean, what are your thoughts on fraternization and those types of relationships?
Right. Well, I agree with what you were saying, how it erodes the professionalism. And I also think just, it's hard to say it in a very diplomatic way, but I feel like if you're on the front lines, a male's instinct is to protect the female. And to change that, because if I go down, you may be more worried about me than the target or the threat. And so I think there's going to be situations where those relationships together with the males and females on the front lines together, it could be detrimental to the readiness.
Yeah, it could. But, I would counter, your
Sure.
thought that the male's natural reaction is to protect a female. But I'd rather get in front of a male that's trying to protect a female than I would a woman trying to protect her kid. So I think
That's
the
a good
instincts are
argument.
there. I mean, there's, I think both sides have got very strong instincts in that regard.
Yes.
And
Yes. And
so-
I want to put out that I do think women are very capable. Very capable. I just think the relationship with the males and females together may not be the best solution for on our front lines.
yeah, I don't know. I saw, my observation again in my experiences was
Right.
it worked out. I mean, you had a little bit, but you would have had that anyways.
Right.
But it was, if the standard, if you demand a professional standard and you hold people accountable and they understand that, then by and large, people are they're gonna rise to that occasion, particularly in the military, because,
Right.
by and large, the military folks are rule followers. I mean, we follow rules and we do what we're told.
I would agree, and maybe it would just take time
Yeah.
for that relationship to work, and to be, a lot of things it takes time, and maybe that would just be what it would take.
Well, come May, you're gonna have your chance to figure it out,
We'll
right?
see. Right.
Yeah, so let me ask, a couple other things about sort of the role of women in the military and the policies that are changing. I know that they just came out with, some of the services have changed the, if you're, only women have babies today. I mean, guys don't yet. So, after you have your baby, it used to be like, I think it was 6 weeks of maternity leave, and I think they've just stretched it out to, I might be wrong, but I think it's like 6 months. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think, and should there be equity for the male as well? I mean, should he get 6 months off as well to be there to parent, or is this just because of the relationship a mother has with their child?
Right.
I mean, how do you reconcile that? And, what do you think that's going to do to the careers? Should they be on a career intermission during that period, or a sabbatical, or?
See, I think these are great questions to be asked and talked about. I'm not a mother, and so I don't have that personal experience, but I do think that the longer time someone has with their child, the better. Especially, when some people get deployed or right after having a child or pretty quickly, or the male has to leave, is very difficult. And so I think it's great that they're getting more maternity leave. And I also think that the males should have some time at home as well, but how to balance that out between the two,
Yeah.
and still them doing what they need to do for their branch of service, is that, I think that would get tricky. But I'm happy with hearing that not only the military but other companies, private companies as well, is catching on to that train of giving more time to these families. I think that the fathers should also have some time at home to bond with that
Yeah,
child.
well, it's an opportunity. The military leads in many ways. I mean, it's all
Right.
about leadership.
I agree.
And we'll touch on that. We're
Sure.
going to come back in about a minute. We're going to take a break. This is Jeff James on Think Tech Live, the military in Hawaii.
Hello, everybody. I'm IC Davidson. Thanks for tuning in to Think Tech Hawaii. One of the things that we do here, or the thing that we do here, is promote civic engagement in Hawaii. What does that mean? We want to talk about things that people want to hear about, and we want you to engage us and be part of that conversation. One of the ways that you can do that is by joining in during our live show via Twitter. How do you do that? Well, you get on the interwebs and get Twitter, get an account, and mention us if you have a question. What you'll do is you tune into our show live, tweet us questions, and our hosts and guests will address them accordingly. It's really easy, it's really fun, and I think that your participation in what we're doing here will help us continue the dialogue on very important issues that we're trying to cover. Sustainability, clean energy, you name it, we're on top of it. We want you to be part of what we're doing, because together we'll be able to make things change. Thank you for watching Think Tech Hawaii, thinktechhawaii.com, weekdays 12 to 5 p.m. That was weird.
Hi, you're live on thinktechhawaii.com, and I'm your host, Jeff James. Today's show is the military in Hawaii, and our topic is women who serve. And our special guest is Lacey Castleberry, who will be going to Marine Corps Officer Candidate School here in a couple months.
Yes.
We were just talking in our last segment about maternity leave for women and equity for males in the military. You know, I'd like to take that to another level.
Sure.
You know, you said that some of the private institutions or private companies are kind of following the military's lead. So, you know, the military, whether people want to acknowledge it or not, has always been sort of an incubator for social experimentation and social change. So if you go back to, let's just go with races, okay? You know, there used to be, you know, huge issues in our country, you know, between the races, okay? And the military did racial integration and, you know, what really I think led the way for the nation. And today, my observation, again, 30 years in the Navy, you know, color, creed, none of that stuff matters, it's commitment.
Yes.
So do you think there's opportunity with gender integration for the military to lead? Do you think they're leading? Do you think that, you know, the way the military is going about opening everything to women, should that be what's happening in, you know, broader society? Because you hear a lot of talk still about the glass ceiling, and I saw a report, I don't know, a couple days ago, you know, showing, you know, women still are making a percentage, you know, on the dollar relative to a male. So if they're going to do the same work, should they get the same pay, and should there be legislation that forces that?
Right. I think that's a great topic because I believe the military is still leading, and I think the military is still kind of a different, their goals are a lot different than the private sector. Their purpose is a lot different. And so I feel like they are leading, and this may be a great thing that the rest of the country kind of follows. So I think there's some strides that are already being made, and I think it'll continue and it'll affect other areas in our economy and our business. So to me, it's just a really hard one because I think there's a lot of roles and MOSs that the women haven't been able to have before that we are very capable. That's just a hard one, I think.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, not everything is the same, not everything is equal.
Right.
And so do you want equality? Do you want parity? Do you want equitable? You know, and is that achievable? And is it even, you know, is it even the right thing? I mean, who knows? Who's to say?
Right, because you have to keep your mission in mind. And so to me, that's what I also like about the Marine Corps is that the mission comes first. And whatever that you can do to complete that mission in the best way, then that's what needs to happen. And so let's say there's a mission and putting women in these other roles that before we couldn't fulfill, we weren't allowed to or restricted from. But if we put women in those roles and that's what is the best way for some of these missions, then I think that that's great. I think that's just still a process of evaluating in time, I guess, to see. But I think it's been great that more stuff has been opening, and maybe it is affecting these other businesses in the country.
Well, you know, when I look back over, you know, my time in the Navy, when I first came in, you know, there was two words that I never heard, and that was sexual assault. It was not a term of, you know, art back then.
Right.
But today, I mean, you can't swing a dead cat and not, you know, hit something that talks about sexual assault in the military.
Yes.
And that's not to say that, you know, it's rampant and out of control relative to kind of the general population. But the last few years I spent in the Navy, you know, we did a full frontal assault on sexual assault, you know, to try to stamp it out, to educate. and to, empower people to be able to, intercede and intervene and prevent it from happening. So, does that concern you at all? Joining a broadly and generally male force? I mean, do you feel like you're going to become a victim, or are you afraid of that, or what are your thoughts?
I'm actually not afraid of that at all, and I do think the military once again leads in that way because most colleges and companies now also have really pushed this awareness against sexual assault and harassment, which is great. And I'm actually, of course there's going to be people that say things, and I think being Afghanistan in majority of it was males, you develop a thick skin, why let a comment really bother you? And then if it's bad enough, you have steps and people you can go to. And I, just from being around the military, I don't have any fears about that happening. And I feel like if there's an instance where it does happen, I feel like I can go to the right people and have it taken care of. So that's really not a fear of mine going in the Marine Corps.
Okay, well, that's good to hear. And I'll say the work that the military's done in this field, really is kind of leading the way.
Right.
If you go back, it's kind of like, take racism, for example. 100 years ago, it was wrong then, but it was accepted and tolerated.
Yeah.
It's still wrong today. The difference is we just don't accept it and we don't tolerate it, particularly in the military. And I think, sexual assault and, relationships and the way, if you go back in time, the way it was wrong then, but people tolerated it and said, oh, he's just being a boy. We're not tolerating that today. And so, I think there's opportunity now to kind of lead in that regard and to kind of lead society. And so are there other areas, do you think the military has opportunity, to lead in social change?
Yeah, well, I think you can kind of combine the two. Like, the military is so forward about combating against this sexual assault. And now women are going to be put in these roles where we haven't been put in before. And, there's going to be those first few women that are, they're kind of the pioneers of these. And I think that, the military, it may be able to have a smooth transition because they are more forward about that.
Okay. Do you think the movement, towards opening combat roles for women and, removing essentially all the barriers to that they had in place before, do you think it's just political correctness on the part of the senior leadership in the military?
Oh, that's a tough question. A part of me wants to say yes. I'm kind of a skeptic too. I think at that high level, there's definitely some games being played. But also I think that it's a very real thing how the military has led the way on things. And so I think that it's not just a PC game, and they're actually making some real changes. And it's not just, it's the real movement happening. And it's very exciting to see, especially as I'm about to enter into the service.
Yeah. So let me ask, do you have any role models?
I do. A gentleman he's from my hometown. He was the first blind officer in the Army.
Really?
Yes. He went to West Point, on one of his deployments, roadside bomb, was blinded. He fought to stay in, and he's done incredible things ever since. He won an SB for the Outdoorsman of the Year. He learned to surf blind and been skydiving, and he got his master's, and he actually he got his master's at Duke and then taught at West Point, and then he ran ROTC at Gonzaga, and he's from my hometown. Scotty Smiley's got a book called Hope Unseen, and he's just such a role model because it was just so much diversity and things that he overcame that, maybe someone expected me to have a female that's a role model, but he just exemplifies really everything that you would want: determination and courage. And so Scotty Smiley is definitely my role model, and it's great because he has that military experience to, kind of give me something to look up to.
Well, you just talked a little bit, he's a wounded warrior, so.
Yes.
And when I was reviewing your resume, I mean, you've done some work with wounded warriors as part of your, giving back to the community. So how did you get tied into that, and do you still do that?
Not as much anymore since I was busy doing my master's, but when I was in Afghanistan, I was pretty busy, and I made friends with a chaplain, Chaplain Lacey that I mentioned. He's a commander, now, and I just became his assistant. He was doing such great things for the people on the base. He was attached to the Marines, so I was visiting the wounded Marines with him in the hospital because, you know, the nurses were so overwhelmed that we could do the little things like help them call their families, let them know what's happening, get them blankets, their gear back from wherever they were, help them connect back with their unit just to send a message of like, hey, I'm okay, I'm going home, anything like that. And so then it just evolved into being connected with nonprofits in the States where they would send stuff over. And then I would get it. And then also the second job I had, I was a helicopter dispatcher. So it was great. So things that soldiers needed, I could get them on aircraft and sent out. And so that commander, Chaplain Lacey, was just incredible to kind of, you know, show me what was there. And so that's how I got into helping wounded warriors. And then also back in Washington, my home state, I also was involved with Camp Patriot. And it's a veteran, Micah, he started it. It's a nonprofit and it's outdoor therapy. So and Scotty Smiley actually did some things with Camp Patriot. He hiked Mount Rainier.
Wow.
Yes, blind.
Yeah,
and
with
that's
2 good eyes.
right. That's incredible. And a guy did it with him that had 1 leg. And so, you know, the Camp Patriot takes these soldiers up to a cabin in Montana, and they hike and they fish, and showing these guys you can still do all this stuff. And so starting in Afghanistan really showed me, and then it was just easy to translate to my life back here, and it's been incredible experience.
Well, I mean, I think that you make a really good point. The abilities, you know, even though you may be missing a limb, I mean, wounded warriors have done some incredible things. You know, back when I was in uniform, in my last job, we hosted some wounded warrior games on Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam. And they sent out a wounded warrior softball team that wanted to play senior commanders. So we put together a team. You know, I had not swung a bat in like forever and a year, but we went out there and we're kind of sizing them up, and I'm like, okay, they must be okay or they wouldn't be sending them out. You know, and there was missing both legs, there's guys with 1 arm, and I'm thinking, you know, how on God's green earth are these guys going to even compete? It's going to be embarrassing, and it was embarrassing for us. I mean, these guys, they throttled us. Guy with 1 arm could hit the ball, you know, over everybody's head in the outfield. The guy that did not have legs but had prosthetic legs could run like it was nobody's business. I mean, it was very eye-opening and humbling, and you know, so it makes you kind of proud to be an American, and to see, you know, it really puts in perspective. Like when you think you're having a bad day, you know, here's a guy that's having a bad time in life and is still making the most of it and doing exceptional. So
very motivational.
Yeah, it is. It's great working with them. And I mean, and you see a lot of these guys will go back into service. I mean, I had a junior officer that worked for me on my minesweeper. He was an EOD officer, was in Iraq and lost a leg from a roadside IED. Came back, got a prosthetic, was able to go through jump school, dive school, everything like that, and has gone back and done combat tours. So
that's incredible.
It's really, really eye-opening. Well, Lacey, I want to thank you for being our guest today on thinktechhawaii.com. And I'm, you know, as I pass the baton to you, you know, I kind of left the military already, but like I feel like I'm handing the baton off to you, and I think that our nation is in exceptional hands with people like yourself that are going to be joining the ranks of the military. And so congratulations to you, and thanks for being here today. Thanks for being and watching thinktechhawaii.com. This show is broadcast every other Friday at 11 a.m. I'm your host, Jeff James. Aloha.